We have a new member to welcome today, Miss Robin Rains over here. If you could just maybe raise your hand. Robin is an architect with Row House Architects, and she's been on our design review committee for about 18 months, so we're thrilled to have added her. Welcome. All right, so first up, we've got roll call. We know Tobias will be out, and who are we missing? There's one more. Who's missing? Just Tobias. Yeah, just Tobias. Okay, great. All right, how about the minutes? Did y'all get a chance to look at the minutes?
One correction.
Okay.
I'm referred to as
Miss
Miss Fletcher.
Fletcher.
At the top. Toward the top of the second page. It's not a big deal, but as long as...
I don't know, I kind of support leaving that one. Just kidding. Okay, so Miss Fletcher, top of page 2. And I wanted to thank, I can't remember who took these minutes, but they did a really good job summarizing the APD conversation, which was pretty informative and lengthy, but I felt like it was represented well in the minutes, so thank you. All right, I did want to add one thing that I think it was said that day but didn't end in the minutes, but I've heard since, and I want to remind everybody. So the minutes almost suggested that the new downtown unit was fully staffed and implemented, but in fact they are still staffing up for it and will be fully staffed and implemented by summer. Isn't that right? Yeah. So that's all for that. All right, we have maybe our briefest agenda in a couple years today. So we have... Oh, yes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. So, yeah, just two major items on our agenda today. The design review for 251 Short Cox, which we'll get to in a second, and officer elections. So, Dana, I saw Shannon earlier. Okay, we're going to give a second to Shannon to show back up. So the process is we'll hear from staff on an initial presentation of the project itself, and then we will hear from the development and design team, and then we will go to public comment, and then the commission will vote. And it looks like we're just waiting for our planner. So we'll just wait a second. Sorry for the delay, folks. We're waiting for our staff rep. Do y'all want to switch this and do the officer elections while we wait? Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I think, Pam, are you our representative for the nominating committee? Or, okay. Oh, never mind, she's here. All right, here we go, we're back on track. Design review, yeah, we're just looking for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Apologize for the delay as we work through some of these technical issues. The project that's before you today is for the property located at 251 Short Cox. It's relatively small parcel, a little under a half acre, located at the intersection of Short Cox Avenue and Lee Garden Lane. If you're not familiar with Lee Garden Lane, it's one of the secondary entrances into the Lee Walker Heights community. So the property is a little bit of a transition property topographically. It is the front of the property, the northern end of the property is somewhat level with Short Cox Avenue, and then it climbs in elevation as you move up Lee Garden Lane, and the Lee Walker Heights community sits up above that. The project proposal is for 14 townhomes spread across 2 buildings. The rear building, the building to the south, is exclusively residential. It's a 3-story building. It has structured parking on the first level, and then the residential living spaces on the 2 levels above, and it's 7 townhome units. The front building is more or less identical, except that it adds an additional level, ground level, that's a retail commercial component, and that portion of the project fronts Short Cox Avenue, and it's oriented to Short Cox Avenue. So we refer to this project as a mixed-use project because it does include that non-residential piece, but it is predominantly residential with the 14 townhomes. I'll move through a few context images for your reference. This is a hand rendering that was supplied by the design team. And you can see it would be to the west, don't have a pointer, but to the right of the screen is a rendering of the 88 88 South Side project, which is another project I think that came before this commission. And it's owned by the same property owner, same developer, and so there is some harmony between these 2 projects, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. So here you can see that commercial level, ground level, non-residential component. There is that parking level just above that, and that parking level is even with the parking level for the building behind, and then you have the residential living spaces on the 2 floors above. The project has been to technical review. It complies with the technical review standards. The only remaining outstanding technical condition has to do with the streetscape and the street tree requirement. This project would require 4 street trees along Short Cox Avenue normally, but due to some underground utility conflicts, this project is applying for alternative compliance and will be heard by the Urban Forestry Commission next week. And the proposal is, as an alternative, is to add these planter boxes approximately in the same location with kind of a same rhythm and pattern as street trees, and it's consistent with the South Side project that is already constructed. And there are some, in your folder you may have seen these already, there are a number of context photos that you can see there. You can see the 88 South Side project that's already built. That's looking up Lee Garden Lane. They talked about how it climbs in elevation from front to back. Here again you can see the 88 South Side project looking east. And there's those planter boxes that I talked about. So as part of this project, they will be constructing the standard 10-foot wide sidewalk, compliant sidewalk, and you can kind of see what the proposal is for the street trees. In talking about the design of the project, we'll move to another context image. Oh, sorry, not that one. So as was noted in the staff report, this project does meet all of the fenestration requirements and all of the downtown design standards that are included in the UDO. The project's been before the Downtown Design Review Subcommittee on 2 different occasions, and the design team took some of the feedback that was offered and did make some revisions including the window size and placement on this side that you're looking at here. Kind of making it a little bit more variable and a little bit more whimsical, I suppose, having different window sizes and placement, because it was challenging to have any kind of uniform window placement given the function of the interior spaces. They also added the brushed metal screening that you can see along what is the garage level just above the ground level retail. That is a perforated metal screen that covers the garage openings. And in order to kind of carry over that design and that sort of rhythmic pattern along short caulks, they kind of turned the corner and added some screening on that would be the west side of the building. They removed an awning that was originally proposed along the facade and have replaced it with some other sort of just small overhead features. And I apologize, I don't have a pointer, but you've got some little covers for over some of the entryways, but not that sort of more traditional awning that you see sometimes along storefronts. And again, there was a horizontal cementitious panel added along the top of the building above that upper residential floor, just to try to create a little bit more of a cap feel. So in general, it appears as though they've taken a lot of that feedback and incorporated into the design. Staff does recommend approval and would just ask the design team to continue to look at their plans if there's any other additional suggestions from the commission. Materials, I'll just run over very briefly. It's primarily cementitious materials for the siding. You've got the 6-inch lap along the front, and you've got the cementitious panels that sort of provide those more vertical elements. And then you've got a cementitious stucco at the ground level. All of the windows are aluminum clad, and the balcony rails are painted metal. And the applicant did bring, or the design team did bring a materials board to share with the commission. And I don't know, Stephen Lee, if you have any additional thoughts from the design review subcommittee?
I think that we decided to maybe just bring some points up that we discussed during the presentation by the designers. So, do you all agree with that?
And that does remind me of one other discussion point that came out of the design review subcommittee, and I could briefly return to the site plan. I apologize, this should have been limited. We're having those challenges. So this project, while it is seeking alternative compliance for the street trees, it does attempt to balance some of the tree loss on the property with some additional plantings. And so I just kind of wanted to highlight that and show you some of the additional tree canopy that is proposed to be established on the western and southern edges, as well as interior to the project. Because of the shape of the lot, they're able to have these sort of larger planting, I'm pointing here. These larger planting islands that provides opportunity to have some tree canopy interior to the site as well, and also kind of create a nice aesthetic. So just wanted to mention
You're
those.
referring to those, are those new trees? It looked
Those
like
are all
some
new
were-
trees.
Okay, and some were preserved in the rear of the project over the side.
I'm going to ask the applicant to speak with that. And looking at the grading plan, there is quite a bit of grading even on that southern side. So I'm not sure how much, if any, of the existing trees are being retained, but I'll let you guys talk about that.
Do you have some comments from the design review committee?
I don't have any yet.
Okay. Shannon, can I ask you a question? I'm blanking on the specifics of this rule, but the step back, the second floor, is this about an overall height? Why does this not have the step back requirement?
The step back requirement is established by the width of the right-of-way,
Okay.
and it happens at the fourth level. And in this particular project, it's only 4 stories tall. So it meets the step back requirements based on the width of the right of way.
I guess I'm at the 4th level. I'm recalling the 2nd level, like the A loft.
I think it can occur at the 2nd level if that's the preference, but it doesn't have to. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let Sasha.
Okay. Walks in on the hot seat.
Sorry, I meant to be here earlier. So in the core of downtown, the step backs are guided by between 2 and 4 stories.
Okay.
This is not in the core of downtown, so it's guided by the right of way. So I don't know how wide is the right of way here? Is it, looks like 40?
We got a 50-foot.
50-foot right of way. So you would, from the grade at the street, you would go up 50 feet up.
Okay.
And so they're probably not, and so really we're measuring to the floor
At the top.
at the
Yeah.
top. So they might even be able to get another story in, but they're not. So
Interesting. Okay. Yeah,
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay. Because what's creating on that block is really just a wall of building.
So I have 2 questions for staff. One is with the grade and the change in topography and all that stuff, is there like stormwater? Because that's one of the first things I looked at when I was looking at this earlier this week, is like, wow, that seems like it could be like a major nightmare for flooding.
There is, with this project, there will be stormwater included. I know it's proposed along Short Cox, and is it on Lee Garden as well?
It's actually in the driveway.
Oh, in the driveway. Well, it's retained in the driveway,
It's
right?
retained in the driveway, but we have connections.
Right, at the
on
street.
Lee Garden and on Short Cox.
Okay, great. And then just the waste, the refuse, where is that between the buildings?
It's going to be roll-out cans. Yeah, just like a residential. These are individually owned townhome units, so we treat them almost like single-family homes.
Okay. Any other questions before we bring up the design team? Great. Come on up, guys.
Good morning, Chair and Commission. I'm Warren Sugg with Civil Design Concepts. We're a locally owned and operated civil engineering firm. This is a very exciting mixed-use project in an area that we've been lucky enough to work on several projects. Lee Walker Heights was already mentioned. Taco Sushi, which didn't last very long, but we worked on that project as well. And then our client's previous project, 88 Southside. So it is fun to see the amount of development that's happening in this area and how it's all kind of working harmoniously together. As Shannon mentioned, and she did sort of a great job, and there's not a ton that I need to add to it, but I will mention a couple things. So as she mentioned, we do have some topo that's happening between Short Cox and going up into Lee Walker Heights. So along Lee Garden Lane, there's quite a bit of change. That gives us a great opportunity to have that ground level activation on Short Cox, to have some retail, some commercial there, and then also have at-grade sort of rear entry garages into the residential units that are above it. As she had mentioned, there's about 4,000 plus or minus square feet of commercial retail along Short Cox, 14 long-term rental units. That would be 28 garage spaces, so 2 per unit. Also, she mentioned a little bit, and I think we'll weigh in on, is there's a sidewalk widening along Short Cox that would happen. That is key because, one, it's a requirement. 2, it's a greenway connector. So in subcommittee and then also in TRC, what we heard was that was sort of helping further that discussion. I think exact alignment hasn't been determined, but this will be a needed greenway connection area. It does have access through Lee Garden Lane. You guys have lost. So that the primary access for vehicles will be off of Lee Garden Lane, which is being constructed. So it'll sort of be tucked behind the building. Will be kind of nice and clean in that way. There was a question about the trash collection. It will be private rollout. So each residential unit would obviously keep their can inside their garage, then roll it out on the day of pickup. And then the commercial would also have space in the rear of their commercial space to be able to collect in rollouts and then take it out on collection day. Now to the really exciting stuff, the civil engineering part. This is what I get passionate about. I know this is the most important part to you guys, so I really want to spend a lot of time on it. So water is coming off of Lee Garden Lane, and I know that's thrilling. Sewer is coming off of both Lee Garden and off of Short Cox, so no issues there. And then storm, thank you for bringing that up. Storm is being handled on site in our private sort of driveway. So we'll have a storm tech system here, which is pretty commonly used throughout Asheville and Buncombe County. And then we have connectivity that can happen into Lee Garden for the majority of the project. And then those few downspouts that might come out on the front of the building can make connection into the to the inlet that's out in Short Cox itself. So we're.
Warren, can I ask you to do us a favor? I'm looking at the stormwater sheet. If you could pull that up, I think it would be a real good just benefit and refresher for us. I think that's C501. Just a refresher for the commission. If you could kind of explain how, as a civil engineer, you're required to manage stormwater per code, and what actually happens to the stormwater on this site, how y'all manage it, and the system y'all chosen.
Yeah, so the box that you have right here is kind of C1, A1, BO. This whole rectangle is a storm tech. And storm tech, you may have seen them going down the road sometimes. You may have seen them. It's usually kind of a yellow, orangish half circle that's made out of a hardened HDP. Has a bottom that's open, that has a gravel base to it, and then it usually has a filter membrane that helps kind of keep it all together. The idea is the water off of these impervious areas, off of your rooftops, off all that gets diverted to that system. It has an orifice and a weir system. That's what the C1 is. So all that water dumps in there, then that box helps send some of it to what's called an isolator road. That isolator road takes the cans, the wrappers, all those kinds of things, and send it over to one area that's a little easier to clean out at times. And then the majority of the rest of the storm goes over to the filter area where that water can get in there, filter through that fabric, through that stone, and then get back into your groundwater usually. In some cases in deep downtown areas where you don't want any gutter foundations, you actually wrap it with a membrane to keep it from doing that as well. But it has a great ability to clean the water and to maintain it in quality and quantity. And then like A1 over here is one of the systems that then allows it to go out to the public system. We take all of our roof leaders to these systems, take all of our paved areas to our systems.
That's fascinating. And if I recall, the rule changed maybe last year. So it used to be if you changed impervious surface 5,000 square feet or more, it triggered a stormwater system. But now is that if you change it at all? Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so because I think to your point, Kimberly, there's a lot of stormwater issues, and it sounds like the planning department took some steps to make sure
Yes.
everything had some stormwater.
And I asked because my dad was a civil engineer, and so being that you're a civil engineer,
Did I do a good job?
I wanted to
Okay.
hear
That was
about
very
the
helpful.
stormwater.
Yeah. That's great. And I noticed that A2 has the trash can layout if you wanted to look at that sheet. Thank you.
Okay. That concludes my part of it. We're certainly going to get to the really exciting stuff. I joke about the exciting stuff. But is there any other questions for me before I sort of turn it over?
No, just a comment that it looks like, so the street tree variance, it looks like it's because there's stormwater systems under the sidewalk already.
Yeah, it's a number of different things. There's the storm, there's gas, and there's also sewer easement. And the previous 88 South side, the sewer line itself was actually in the way. In this case, it's the easement for the sewer, the storm, and then the gas line. So a lot of things to play chicken with.
Warren, since the planters and these trees are on your plans, I'm going to ask you this question. I'm not sure if there's a developer representative here, or is it just the design team? Okay.
We have an owner as well.
So obviously there's an issue. This is how this issue has to be worked out, and I think there's a number of good examples of where this does work in town, and then down further on the street where the condominiums exist now. My only concern is kind of how these are maintained long term. And typically if these have been tree grades within the right of way, after the project is accepted, the city of Asheville, responsibility of maintenance is turned over to the city of Asheville. And in this case, the maintenance requirements and replacement requirements on these planters are a lot different than the street trees buried in the sidewalk. And I don't know if it's like maybe some kind of informal memorandum of understanding or what, but I'd like to see the developer somehow in writing state that they agree to the long-term maintenance of these planters. They do require a lot of maintenance. During the summer, they'll have to have, every other day they have to be watered basically, unless they have an interior water reservoir system or something. But this building may be a little bit different from the condos down below because there's condo owners living there full time, and I'm not sure how those are maintained. But that's just an area of concern that I have. Not for the first few years. This is bright and shiny and new, but 10 years down the road, when we're all out of here, well, somewhere else, and but just the replacement. What is the material that the existing planters are? Is it like a fiberglass or a cast concrete or
It's like a cast
KFRC or?
I think it's a cast concrete.
It's cast concrete.
Cast concrete.
And they've been in place for 2 years, and we put these plants in, and we have not watered them, and they're still in very good condition. There's only one time when we first put the plants in, so they came in and pulled them off, not all.
Yeah.
Pulled the plants out, threw them into the road. And,
Well,
but we were obviously replaced them.
we've had 2 very, very wet summers too, so.
But
I think
Can I just interrupt you one time to say, can you speak at the mic? We're recording, so we'd love to hear your input, but if you could come up.
Well, and I would just add the recommendation, I know in other planters downtown, like at the Grove Arcade, there's someone hired that does seasonal planting, that takes care of the watering, and those planters are always beautiful.
Right.
So that is another thing to
Yeah.
consider, hiring someone for the care of those.
So I'm Peter Tom, and that was kind of my idea when I bought the lot, to see something there. I actually live at Southside in one of those townhomes. I enjoy it very much, being able to walk to town. I used to live in South Asheville, hate the traffic. I don't drive much anymore, and that's the benefit of living downtown. But so I remember that we talked about that when the planters came. I don't know what happened to that, but somehow I want to say that something came up where the association maintains the planters, and the planters had to be built in such a way that the city can actually pick them up with a forklift, because they have feet underneath it, and you can pick them up with a forklift in case they ever had to open up the sidewalk. And so our HOA for the South Side, and there will be a HOA for 251, because it's more a condominium, it's not an apartment building. Each one will have their own meter and their own home, really. So there is an HOA in place, and we have a landscaper. He maintains these plants, so they start to overgrow a little bit and hang over the planters, so he comes and clips them. And he has capability to water them, but I know if it's a really dry time. On the other hand, the plans were, I guess, we had to plant certain plants in there, and I don't recall the name of them. And there was 3 plants picked out for the planter, and so they're not going to become something very huge, and they're easy replaceable. I mean, we're talking $20 a plant, so, and the HOA, when we have our meeting, we always bring the planters up also, and we want it to look nice. So that's all I can say about the planters. Thank you.
Just as an extra added level of assurance is that the requirement, the street trees is a site plan requirement. And should anything related to a site plan ever come out of compliance, and all required landscaping does have maintenance requirements by the property owner. So if that landscaping is not maintained, it is potentially enforceable as a violation of the site plan. And since these planters are an alternative to the street trees, they will become a required site element.
Thank you. Is there a neighborhood identification process required for this development, or is it under a threshold?
No, there is a notification
Okay,
requirement.
cool. So I was looking through the files here, and I don't see that information, and I find that typically very helpful.
Well, the letter is in there.
The letter about this meeting, but I'm talking about the neighborhood notification meeting that typically takes place before staff is involved.
Oh, no, we just do notification for the meeting. Yeah, oh, sorry, there, yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So we did have a neighborhood compatibility, I'm not sure the right term for it. We did have that meeting. We actually held it at Urisco. They were very nice to be our neighbor and allow us to have it there. We certainly submitted it with the TRC submittal. It had about 8 to 10 people who came, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it was generally just interest in the project. There was an auto, or I remember there was an auto parts or auto salvage person that was kind of down South Slope from us that was there. Urisco obviously was there, and a couple other ones. They asked a little bit about materials. At that point, we weren't sure exactly what materials were going to be. We talked about slope of the site, our vision of commercial on the low, and kind of ran them through the project. I didn't at that time hear anything to really note.
I can make sure that we add that neighborhood meeting information to the project file. So if you have any, it is in the TRC project file, and I apologize, I didn't realize that was something you all would be interested in, but I'll add that after the meeting if you want to take a look.
Yeah, I always find it helpful. Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions for the design team, or was there, yeah. Did you want to say anything, Patty and Russ of Glazer?
Color board here.
Yeah. Come on up.
Russ Nichols, Hi, I'm Patty Glazer with Glazer Architecture. This is Russ Nicholson, also an architect with our firm.
Okay.
He's going to play Vanna White, and these are the materials. And since the screen has disappeared, maybe prop that
It'll come
image
back.
up there. You can take the little one off, maybe that has the colors, because we'll have the colors on here. There you go.
You pass the board.
Yeah. So.
This is the materials.
Color board.
You're good.
But before you start passing it, let me point out a couple things. Yeah, if you hold it towards these folks, sorry. As we mentioned, the retail area, the lower level on Short Cox, that is going to be stucco. And it's this darker color, so it has a dark base, but actually with all the aluminum storefront windows, it's really mostly glass with a little bit of stucco. And that stucco does continue up into, up to the balconies, you can see, of the residential units. And to Sage's point, it's interesting when she mentioned a setback after 2 stories, and although that's not required here, we actually do in effect have that, because this is where the garage level is, right here at the entrance. So we do have a 2-story space within a setback, I'm trying to remember if it's 6 foot, about 6 feet. Before you get to the residential. And then to point out these other materials on here, and again, we'll pass it around. The 2 perforated metal panels, those are that decorative sort of 3-dimensional sculptural element above the storefront, but below the balcony. And those stick out about 12 inches maximum. They therefore do not need an encroachment agreement. They are within the property line because the building is back 1 foot from the property line. And they are really just a decorative element to add a little interest there, but it's the same metal as the aluminum storefront. So we're trying to make that ground level appear to have more presence than just sort of a squatty retail thing. You know, give it a little more street presence. And one feature that hasn't been pointed out yet today, I don't think, is that we've created a little outdoor sort of courtyard area. You can see it on the plan better, but that's behind that railing. There's a retaining wall over here with a little patio behind there. And that retaining wall is only about 4 feet high. It looks a little ominous over there, but we hoping that the adjacent retail space will make good use of that. And as far as the retail space goes, although the street is sloping, the existing Shortcock Street, the finished floor elevation of the retail is all on one level. And so there can be up to 3 retail tenants in there. It might end up being 1 or 2 or 3, but you do enter through the recessed nook in the floor plan. If I could figure this out, I would change to a floor plan, but I know you guys all have that as well. But let's see, what else is there to point out? Related to the project that's adjacent, and I might point out that Peter Tom, our client, and the developer actually lives in that next grouping of townhouses. So he's very familiar with what goes on in the neighborhood, walks his dog in the neighborhood, and isn't just someone passing through town doing a project. But we wanted this project to relate a little bit to the other project, but really have its own identity. And with the retail, I think that does it. But also, our other project, 88 Southside, has those strong vertical features of the elevator towers that not only color-wise, are prominent, but they have a roof configuration that makes them stand out. Whereas with this project, we've got the cementitious panels, the light color that comes up and over and creates a cap or sort of a crown, kind of an L-shaped configuration. And then the lap siding would be a cementitious material, and that's this middle color. It's kind of a bluish gray. And you can pass those around now, thank you. Yeah, so this case, we have this coming up and over in the other project. It's more sort of a vertical thing with these elevator elements with their own roof, projecting. And so we're having this read more as sort of one sort of larger structure.
I'm trying to think if there's another example of retail with parking on top of it, which is, I think, a really unique, successful way to have designed this slope. But I don't know that we have that in downtown yet. It's creative.
I don't know.
Yeah.
In the big cities, I guess, but...
Cambria parking over retail? Oh, AC.
So,
AC, for sure.
I have a very quick question about parking outside of the owners. With the mixed use, this might be a staff question. Is there parking required for retail? Or
There are no parking requirements for projects in the downtown except for hotels.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be anything required. There is some informal on-street parking that kind of occurs in this area. And of course, the residential units have their dedicated parking, but for any of the non-residential, they would presumably find parking.
And then for the stormwater and ADA, so when I look at that, I think of it being like a nightmare for people with disabilities in terms of that slope and any kind of rushing water. So I'm just wondering, I have a lot of concerns for people with disabilities. Somehow the slope with water and then not having all the catch go in the parking lot, but not necessarily anything at street level can be a danger to people who have any kind of physical disability. So I don't even know how to ask the question, but I know what I'm looking at and I can see it through the eyes of a disabled person.
So I'll offer a couple thoughts, and then Warren may have some other information he wants to share. But accessibility is always a challenge in Asheville given our topography. And when it comes to sidewalks, sidewalks that follow the grade of a road aren't required to meet the same accessibility requirements. There are some requirements for landings as you have entrances, but all of the entrances for this project are going to be from Shortcocks, where it is much more accessible. It's going to be more level, and all of those entrances will be accessible. So they will meet all of the grade requirements for that. Stormwater, again, Warren explained how a lot of that stormwater will be diverted into the storm tech system that is interior to the site. And there is existing or will be a public storm system along the road. So for that rushing water that's coming down the street, you know, it should be graded in such a way that it goes into those storm systems. Now, Asheville, more and more, it's more frequent to have these, you know, sort of heavy rain events, and our system can only take so much. So, you know, there are some challenges. We continue to look at what the options are to better manage that. And I don't know, Warren or Patty, if you have anything else to add.
I'll just add that at the conclusion of, even if this project didn't happen, just because of Lee Walker Heights project, there's going to be 3 inlets along the parcel line of this that's along Lee Garden Lane, and the last one is directly at where the crosswalk would be along Short Cox. So I don't have any concern with bypass of stormwater. There's 3 inlets for it to be caught in. I don't know if that was part of the concern, and then I heard ADA, and it just kind of echoed what Shannon said. We've tried to match the road slope, and that's kind of the best we can do on that part of it. But along Short Cox, it is ADA compliant.
Sure, and I know we're talking about the building, but people use buildings. So I'm just bringing it up because it seems like, you know, I can tell by the way you're speaking, you really enjoy your profession. And that makes me excited. And I can see problems with, like, depending on how the doors open, if there's any ADA buttons at the retail level, and then add any inclement weather on top of it. To be honest, many folks who build things around here don't think about those things, and then when it's time for people to use them, there's a whole group of people that cannot use the services or the buildings because it's non-functional. And so it's functional for able-bodied people who are you can use all their limbs, and so I guess my question is, and again, this has nothing to do with my vote, but is there a way for you to reconsider through the lens, whether it's having a specialist, a person who really understands functionality in ADA, that slope, the doors, how they open, if there's automation, all that's going to matter for how many people are actually capable of engaging, visiting, you know, owners, things like that, getting in to do their thing.
Right. We will comply with every ADA
of course
things if we have to. And yeah, I would say that the retail, there is a little bump out there on that low level, so or lower level, I shouldn't say low level, ground level, that allows someone to come out of those doors and still be undercover, and that's going to be all ADA compliant onto the actual public sidewalk. The slope of Lee Garden Lane is sort of non-negotiable. I can't change that. But
yeah, I understand that.
People will have ADA compliance when they're in the commercial space, and then the residents who are staying there will have that ability as well.
Yeah, if it's not super clear from the plans, and then I wonder if this is what Patty was jumping up to mention too, is there really aren't any entrances on Lee Garden. So the only entrance really is the driveway entrance into the property, and that would be for the residential units.
You can see that in the hard copy down there.
But yeah, no, I know that. I can tell there's no entrances. So.
Right. So for a residential, so somebody accessing one of the residences, you were going to have a perfectly accessible parking area, and then be able to get into your units for the individual units. And then down low for that commercial, that'll all be accessed from Short Cox. There is that one entrance, I believe, on the side, but it's you can't see behind the retaining wall, but there is that space behind the retaining wall that is accessible.
One thing
You may not understand from, there's a central entrance for the retail in the middle of the building, and that is level off of the sidewalk, and from that into all of the spaces, the commercial spaces, is completely level. And it's undercover.
Yeah, and we're required to, and we do design to comply with ADA. I mean, the North Carolina Building Code requires that for new construction, so it does comply. And if Shannon can get the floor plan up, one more of the commercial, where to go?
What, up, there you go.
There it is. You can, and Russ, point out that recessed nook, because Short Cox itself is not very steep. And then you can see there that you can enter any of the 3 retail spaces in the center part of that building where it's literally dead level with the sidewalk. And then we have the clearances around the doors. We won't need the automatic push because we have the 18 inches clear and the 12 inches and all of that, and the doors swinging properly. So, and of course, they'll all have handicap accessible toilet rooms.
I'm not sure if are you getting your question answered in the way that
Oh.
Are you sure? Okay.
Whoops.
Yeah, it's not that I don't understand.
Oh.
I think I'm either not being clear or you're not
Oh.
understanding what I'm saying. So
Okay,
it's fine.
sorry.
Thank you.
I will segue to another ADA compliance thing that isn't specific to this project as much as it is the whole city, but in my experience in downtown, these new stamped concrete patterns we're doing are actually very troublesome to differently able people, particularly ones in wheelchairs, and I see them every day avoid the sidewalk. I shouldn't exaggerate, not every day. I see them use the street instead of the sidewalk because it's like dun, 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 dun. And I'm wondering if this has the stamped concrete or if we have adjusted to this different concrete sidewalk change yet.
So we share some of your concerns about the stamped concrete. We've been having conversations amongst our staff whether or not that's the right pattern to have in our downtown. And there's also, not just from an accessibility standpoint, but there's some
Longevity.
yeah,
Yeah,
maintenance
they're
issues
horrible.
and stuff like that. So it is currently, however, a standard, and I believe it is what you were doing, stamped concrete on this, I believe, yeah. Or it's not stamped, it's scored.
It's grooved or
Scored,
scored, whatever the term is, it's really
For
not
that running bond
functionally
pattern.
great for
Yeah.
anyone. Yeah. Okay, so this is going to have stamped because that's our
Scored.
running bond.
Yeah.
It's not a standard.
Yeah. Okay.
That is the current standard.
Yeah.
But that is
yeah.
the downtown standard.
Yeah.
Sage,
Sure.
I have a question for Patty. I have a question on the front facade above the retail. You had mentioned that you decided not to do an awning, or I guess it was in our written documents. I was just curious, those triangular that look like they're 3-dimensional. What is the color of those?
Those are like wherever that color board is, they're a brushed aluminum, and so they'll be the same finish as the aluminum storefront for the retail down below. So it's kind of
But they're solid? They're solid brushed aluminum?
well, they have
Triangle.
holes in them. No, they have perforations like that. There'll be 2 different patterns. One will have square holes, and the other has square holes. I guess that's and the other has circular holes. And so where you see that sort of crease, diagonal line, one half of that panel will be one of those patterns. The other half will be the other pattern.
Okay, and then also that horizontal line that looks like it's maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, that's also that perforated panel?
That's stucco, I think. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Oh, that's the
That's the
stucco. That's
stucco.
the building face.
That's where the signage would occur.
And then the glass color, what is the color of the glass? There isn't a glass on your panel.
Well,
We
these.
have 80% visibility and the minimal reflectivity will meet the requirements,
So
the design requirements.
yeah, so it meets the North Carolina Energy Code, which it has to. But these days, fortunately, they make glass that you can still see through because it's important for retail to be able to see through there. So we've been using that on recent projects, probably like Black Mountain College Museum recently. Anyway, there's high performance glass that's still, so it won't be the tinted stuff, but it'll still meet the energy code.
Okay. And each building, is it about 15,000 square feet per building, or is it less than that? Do you know what the square footage is of each
Russ?
building?
Or maybe it's not, it should be on the development.
15,000 per building. The front building is close to that. The rear building is 4,000 feet smaller.
Thank you.
Yeah, so each level is about 4,000, something like that. I think
Total
it's
project's 26,000
4,
square
8,
feet.
12, 16. Yeah.
Between the 2 buildings?
Mhm.
Thank you.
I commend you guys for activating the the ground floor. 'Cause I know there's a lot of artists and burgeoning businesses in that area, and I think that activating that is going to be really important for bringing people down to that area. But I wanted to address Sage's question about retaining any of the tree canopy towards the back. Retaining any of the trees towards the back, or is it all going to be torn down and new trees are going to be planted?
The site design folks, I mean, we've been involved, but, they created the final landscape plan, so I'll let Warren address that.
Yes, so we certainly heard in the subcommittee some just discussion on tree canopy, and I will say that the architect and the owner has really pushed us to get as much canopy back in there as we can. Right now we've got 16 trees that are going back and 88 shrubs. We've put it in about every square inch that we feel comfortable that the plant material can actually still survive. Any more will just be at the detriment of it, is our opinion.
And I know I've seen on other lots that I suspect were clear cut, a little post-World War II, like this one probably was, judging by the date of Lee Walker Heights. They tend to have a lot of invasive plants already. Is that the case with the site currently?
Yeah, it does have quite a bit of vine growth on several of the trees. I don't know exactly how many of those trees have vine growth, but there is a good bit of that. And the client, because of traffic through the area, did clean it out a few years ago to try to make it where it was just the trees, but those vines do come back pretty aggressively.
I want to add something. Yeah, I just want to add just real quick for the property itself. When I bought the property, we took out these 55-gallon garbage containers just to start. Probably 20 of those of garbage that was in these woods. And then we also cleaned it because people used to sleep in those woods. And there was tents in there. And so we cleaned it. When I talked to the police department, they said if you cleaned it where we, at least from the street, can shine our lights into the woods, we can see. So we left all the trees that were more or less okay, because a lot of them were rotten and a lot of them were not really good trees. There's nothing special in there. But it was cleaned, it was made so if you go by there you can see it. I mean, there's trees there, but you can look through the foliage. And I have a landscape person. He comes all summer, once a month, cuts all the stuff that is growing up, where people could hide behind it or whatever, that all got cleaned, and it's been like this for 3 years.
I wonder where those folks are sleeping now.
Page 2 of the design set, it's C101, has a tree plot, and it does show a line at which it says existing trees outside this line will remain. So if you're curious which ones, it's the second page, yeah.
Sage, just as we don't have all those plans on
your file?
computers, so.
You should be able to link to the project materials from the agenda.
We did, but they're not all here.
They're not all in there? I have. Yeah, we
should be the same. They're not all here.
You have to download it. That, I think you have to come in and download it.
Can you see that from here? This one looks more like a white page.
No, it's not here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that what I put in the trash bin here? There you go. Okay. So if you want to take a minute and scroll through there and see if you have any additional questions. I know we're having a little haywire today, but.
This isn't even the Friday the 13th meeting.
But if you want to take a second and scroll through there and see if that provokes any new questions, please do.
Patty, I have one question about the rendering that you did for the east corner. I really appreciate that you brought the fiber cement as wide as that storefront. I was also wondering if you would consider wrapping that stucco metal panel around one more bay to maybe make it tie into the retail street front a little better.
Ross east corner?
Look, that,
Right there, yeah.
that other board back.
Oh, on the other side.
Right, just that, where that panel comes down, maybe where that stucco goes up to cover the parking, if that could just wrap that corner to be in line with that storefront, maybe,
You mean here?
yeah, maybe that would give it a little bit more of an impact on the important corner that's gonna be visible. It's just something to consider.
Uh-huh.
It might be where
Yeah,
signage lands.
We thought about that. It's hard to figure out,
Yeah.
where the two should intersect, you know, the residential component. I mean, we did it, obviously the storefront itself wraps around.
Right.
Then what we think is nice is you walk down the street, you can see it's a retail shop and it was inviting. And then we took the little panels and wrapped it around. But, we could consider that sort of like the long vertical element, you know, this thing, imagine that one, I suppose it could, I don't know, it's hard to know what's too jumpy.
Right,
I
it's
don't know.
something to play with. I just think it would make it look more cohesive from that corner, but maybe it wouldn't.
But we'll definitely look at that,
Yeah.
and see, but, you know, not objecting to that. So there you go. Yeah. And as I said, we did try to create, you know, sort of, it feel like the retail shop is therefore taller and
Right.
has more presence, so
Right.
that could be, you know, something to consider that'll help that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay.
So I mean, I plan on supporting this, but I think that, because I think the applicants have done a good job of finding of following the guidelines. I'm really a big fan of the street level retail. I think it's a great choice for their, you know, I hope that we get something that, like maybe a small grocer or something like that serves the community and, you know, fills in a food desert and not something like a real estate office, which really isn't a community amenity. Hopefully we get that type of business in there. So this is more just sort of like more toward us and toward like our process. Because what we have here is the only other parking requirement in downtown is a 1 to 2, one parking spot for every 2 units in a hotel. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
This has 4 times the only other retired. This is a 2 to 1, not 1 to 2. So I think it really kind of pains me to see 28 cars added to 14 units in here, and I really feel like this might be an opportunity for us to talk about parking maximums. And obviously, like this is not something I'm gonna. This is not an opinion I'm gonna apply to this project because they're within compliance.
Yeah.
But I think this is an opportunity for us to talk
Like a
maybe
future discussion.
about how much parking is too much, and that's really.
There'll be a lot of opinions on that one.
Yeah.
We won't get to hear about the other side. There's not enough parking.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Okay.
you know,
And perhaps we could talk about that after we
Yeah.
finish
Of course,
reviewing the
these
project.
If you build the
parking
cars,
is all
you get cars.
garaged. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not on the
Right.
street.
Yeah.
You know, and they're stacked too deep in the garage because it's, you know, a deep one, but it's one family unit, so.
Yeah,
anyway, yeah.
And I understand that, but those cars are still going to come in and out, and it's not. And so, you know, people who are looking for a walkable neighborhood won't necessarily be attracted to these because they can own 2 cars and live here.
Like the owner himself said.
I
Yeah.
want to add something to this, just so everybody knows. So I live there, obviously. We know that. Guess who parks in front of the building? On Saturdays and Sundays, it's nice and empty for whatever reason. Maybe less people at the hospital. But they all line up at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's slab full, and they all march from there and walk to the hospital. You would think the hospital would have enough parking for their employees. Because I do not know why they park there. And on the weekends, there is the dental place right there on the corner.
We don't have to say
Smile
anything.
something.
It's okay,
Yeah. And on the weekends, they all park there because the gentleman that owns the property says, I'm okay with it. That would be on the weekend. So our street is empty. But otherwise, you know, I mean, we have a hard time with the garbage cans because we put them on the road.
And they
So we
can't
put
be-
them out early, right in the middle of the road, just about. So when garbage day is, there's less people parking there because the garbage cans impede. But otherwise, they load up this road and they all march to the hospital.
And there may be, you know, the South Slope in general, it has some metered spaces coming to it. I don't know if that stretches into this street, but that might help with, you know, moving people as opposed to parking there all day. Interesting about the hospital. Andrew, I heard you, and I've got it on the list. There's a couple things that came up in this discussion that we would probably talk as a commission on a different item outside the design review. One more question for y'all, though. we have recently supported a climate emergency, and I'm wondering if anything about this building is going to be solar ready or any kind of green components or anything. I was curious. I know in other projects you've done green components, but does this one have any, and could it be transitioned to solar in the future? I know that's about roof structure and, you know, weight load. Things to consider, though. We did just pledge that we would become renewable by 2030 and 2042. So it does look like you have a nice solar slanted roof there.
Well, we do, and we have actually for a number of, we consider good design as far as relating, like even the windows and the performance of those to the orientation, whether it's north or south and that kind of thing. In the old days, you didn't have those options, but the windows can look the same and have different amount of glass. And then we have really energy efficient systems in there. We work with engineers who assess various, whether it's the mechanical, water heater, whatever, so those kinds of things. We haven't talked about solar panels
Solar
per se
ready,
on
just,
here.
for the day when it comes, whether or not the roof could sustain the
Right.
weight. And I would encourage you all to include those energy efficiency things in your packets in the future as we move towards this different, goal
Right.
for the community.
And of
Those are
course,
good things to
a
know.
big part of sustainability obviously is density and
Right.
walking distance to amenities
And mixed
all
use
of that.
and-
So,
yeah.
clearly rather than urban sprawl or, anyway, but
Yeah.
we'll definitely.
But think about the roof. I mean, it may
Sure.
become very handy in the
Yeah.
future. Yeah.
Good
Okay.
suggestion.
Any
Okay,
other
great.
questions for the design team or the owner? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So we're going to move to public comment. It's 9:39.
Wait,
Oh,
sorry, I
I'm
have
sorry.
one more question.
One more question.
It looks like everything within the building is stair related and no elevators or anything like that, correct?
That's true in these units. In the other two that are right down the street by the same developer, those actually have, residential elevators in there. It obviously adds a significant cost, and these are rentals, and we're hoping to keep the price of those and less expensive than the ones down the street that do have the elevators in them. And so yeah, there aren't elevators.
Is there a requirement at which point elevators must be in place? Never, no. Is it
no.
4-story? I don't.
No.
So that's something to think about. Okay.
I thought you said that these were being owner occupied.
We've heard both. Yeah.
They're actually rentals, but I think when
Yeah,
he,
so the other ones are,
They're-
the units were actually approved for short-term rentals, so there's some owners that live there, and then other people.
But this
buy
one,
it.
is this-
And
But
this
this
is going to be year-round rentals.
Okay.
There are condominiums, so there's gonna be a HOA in place, and there also obviously can be sold where somebody could live in those units. And that's not 100% determined, so they can be rentals or sold. If somebody can live in it, they can rent it on no short term.
so it's a condominium, but it's a rental condominium. Well, the building can be condominiumized, and Peter Tom could own all the condos and then be the landlord and rent them out. Is the way that works. It just gives you the opportunity to, at some future
It sounds like
date,
they haven't decided.
sell off one, separately.
Yeah. It's not our call. It doesn't matter to the design and
Yeah.
that we're reviewing, but
Yeah.
it just was helpful. We heard both, so I understand why you asked. Yeah. We
Right,
heard
and
it
I
said
think that
differently.
terminology came out more to imply that there's one family unit living upstairs and downstairs as opposed to stacked apartments where above you and below you, totally non-related to your.
You were using different terminology.
Right, I know that, yeah, I can understand that confusion.
For the HOA, I mean, the only thing the city says is they can't be short-term.
Right, and these are not going to be and were not planned to be.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready for public comment? Okay, public comment at 9:42. Would anyone like to speak about the project? Okay, if you could just come up and say your name and you have a few minutes.
I'm Julie Eldridge, visiting, new to Asheville.
Welcome.
Also, I'm AICP urban planner and have been through this process in other cities. A comment about bike parking. I didn't see a place for bicycles to park in the front of the building. though I understand from talking to the staff planners that there's a place inside, if you're a resident, you'd have a place to park inside?
The residential units would park in, and Warren, you have...
So just a concern, that there's no place really specified for people to park who are visiting the retail spaces. They're going to be wrapping their chains around the trees and to the front gate structure in front of the building. So just kind of wondering, if you were visiting retail, where would you park as a visitor to the space? To decrease automobile dependency,
Right.
they make
That's a good
bikes
point.
more attractive.
I'm trying to think if there's.
Sheet 201.
Okay.
So the residential units, we would expect less parking to occur in garages. For the commercial component, it's shown on sheet 201, I think it's on the Lee Gardens side.
Correct.
Yeah, and
Oh, proposed bike rack. Yeah, so it's right at the very corner of the sidewalk. Yeah, so there is a proposed bike rack.
Okay.
Yeah, but great point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other public comment? All right, public comment closed at 9:43. And we are back to a vote. There is a sample motion included in your packet in the staff report. Does anyone feel compelled to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend approval of the design for 251 Shercox Avenue as presented based on the site plans, elevations, and materials submitted, and discussion heard during this review, and there weren't any conditions. So.
Can I get a second?
Second.
One discussion point. So we know that they're going to the Urban Forestry Commission for alternative compliance on the planters. Do we need to mention that in our motion? Is it just, I mean, our approval is based on the site, but we are expecting the Urban Forestry Commission to also weigh in on these alternative compliance. So
That's
I'm just not clear.
happening no matter what we do. Anyway.
Right, I'm just not clear if our motion needs to include that we acknowledge that is happening, that they have let me just look at this.
I think if you had any feedback, and certainly the maintenance question, I can communicate that and make sure it's clear in the alternative compliance, should they approve it, that
Okay.
it means that they are
Okay.
responsible for maintaining
That would be great. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Got one nay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Yep, thank you.
I'd like to just point out briefly, now that we're past the design review portion, before we start slapping ourselves in the back about attacking the housing crisis with these units. I can say a lot of these units at the price points I imagine are not going to be really available to many people to afford to rent here, who live here, but they are investment grade properties. But investment grade properties don't always create housing for people. They just kind of create a bank account in a home shaped box. And so I'm just going to make a prediction that we're not going to actually see a lot of residents here.
That we're not going to wait.
That we're not going to actually see a lot of residents here.
Oh,
in these buildings.
interesting. And we don't know what their rent roll would be.
I
did hear the
I have an
comment about-
envelope and I know how square footage works, so I know I can do some work on the back of it. So I'm just going to throw it out there. The parking maximum thing, I think that we get traffic because we build for cars and not people, and building for more cars and building for less people is not exactly how we work on traffic. So I would love to see a discussion of a parking maximum begun, especially in our downtown core. And especially, I mean, if you look at the townhomes that are going up on Broadway across from the High Five and Pioneer Building, those are apartments on 3-car garages.
Whoa. I think it's a great idea to have that discussion. There's a couple things that came up.
It's a heck of a lot of traffic, and that's a heck of a lot of car storage, and not people storage and people usage. So
I want to just say to what you're saying, I'd like to keep in mind that though there are people that are not car dependent, but also cannot walk everywhere. And, case in point, in the Wall Street garage, I made a big stink because the elevators were down. This was last year, and there was no parking for anybody of physical difference. And I said, well, when there is handicap parking on Wall Street, then feel free to shut the elevator down. And now there's handicap parking on Wall Street. So please, as the max and minimums, I understand, but also there's a need for people with physical differences to be able to get around, and Lyft and taxis and all of that don't accomplish that.
absolutely, building for accessibility is to me is a very different thing than blindly building for cars.
No, I
So
understand, but
that's-
that building didn't build for accessibility either.
Okay. The other thing I was going to bring up for a future agenda item, if you all are interested, is this idea around the running bond sidewalk. And if staff are already working on it, if we can help push that forward faster, because there are lots of projects out there that have yet to pour concrete, and this could still be updated. I'm not familiar with, one-on-one projects, if they prefer the running bond or if it's easier or cheaper or something, but it seems like if it's becoming problematic, if it's impacting our accessibility and I would say our sustainability, because it's requiring maintenance, they're cracking faster than other methods, that we should, as a commission, talk about it and maybe make a recommendation.
That was a downtown commission decision, so all we
So
have
let's
to do is
call it back.
that we are going to change that in the guideline. I mean, that's all we have to do.
Well, and it's not on our agenda today, so we should put it on a future agenda is what I'm asking. Would you like to have it on a future agenda?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
We would, the thing is, though, we would have to come up with what we are going to choose instead.
Or just even a recommendation to staff to hurry this one up, right?
Because, we don't want to have no standard, because that's
I
how we
agree.
ended up with the disaster that we have now, like Lexington Street and like Haywood Street. So if we're going to change it, we should have some kind of standard.
I agree, and I think, so having that conversation now is not my goal, because I think staff would probably come forward with their ideas or what discussion they've had thus far, and we would be, doing it now would seem a little without information. So if everybody's in agreement, I'll suggest that we have it as a future agenda item. And Andrew, your
As
parking.
long as we're incorporating this notion that ADA standards are quite minimal, and if we're going to be inclusive around accessibility, we need to also add standards to what we are calling access for all. Because building codes to ADA requirements are at the very bottom basement and do not speak to functional use for people with differences.
Okay, so, and that could be another item that we discussed.
Sage, I'm wondering if this should go to the Parking Transportation Committee first to just come up with maybe a basic guideline and then bring that guideline, back to the whole committee.
What I'm hearing is that the staff have already discussed this a little bit, so maybe what we do, that's fine. I'm happy to bring that forward as the chair of that as well. So let me do a little digging to see where staff are at on this, if they're available to speak on it, if they have other designs in mind, if there are other factors that we aren't aware of right now, and then we'll have a grander discussion. If it needs to go through parking first, I'm happy to bring it there first. Does that sound good? I will email you, Dana, with those two things. Okay, we are now on to our next item, which is officer elections, and since I've been an officer pretty much the whole time, I'm forgetting how this process goes. We have little slips of paper. We're all individually voting and turning them into Dana.
We actually, the nominating committee, which was Pam Winkler, myself, and Tobias, we met basically through email. We have two individuals that have put their name forward to remain or to be chair. One is Sage Turner, and the other is Dane Behringer. And then we also have two people for the vice chair position, Franzi and Andrew Fletcher. So I think Dana has put a ballot together so that everybody can have the opportunity to vote.
And then we're turning them back into you, Dana? Okay. Just a little background, so we make this decision every year. There's a couple. Thank you.
like New Hampshire and not like Iowa. I believe in you, Dana.
That was great. The only other thing, so we're going to move to updates next, and what's the process here? Are you doing this now? Or are we doing this after? Okay, you're going to, okay. Let's go ahead. I'm going to wake up the computer and get it to the next agenda item while you do that.
Isn't that a city and Duke kind
There's
of responsibility?
Yeah, but there's also responsibility on the property. But it would be an interesting, like, there's not a lighting sheet as a, similar to the stormwater or the tree sheet.
Well, we do have a lighting ordinance, which I worked on, but it's more concerned with not having too much lighting, because that's really the main issue, is people have too much lighting on their properties. And so we actually try to limit the lighting so that it's just within the property. Because what we have a problem with is people with too much uplighting and also too much spreading of light across property boundaries.
But as we do more infill and have more buildings where we're not, where they get taller, the safety is being impeded on the street for people who are,
It's a good conversation. There have been a couple incidents downtown that were very tragic and upsetting to the community that happened in dark areas. It might be of interest to the commission to get a general, better understanding of the lighting requirements.
Can you put that in the notes about the lighting? Because I do care about that.
Well, we could look at the lighting ordinance.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, let's educate ourselves and see what it's already
It's been
doing.
updated. Well, it's been about 5 years, but it hasn't updated.
Right.
Okay.
And I want to be able to
Yeah.
speak to.
I agree with you, yeah.
I think it was updated mainly for the light pollution issue. I think
Right,
not
that
for
was
the
the
not
main-
not for the safety side of it, as far as I know.
The
Yeah.
main thing is the light pollution, although, when we replaced the street lights with the LED lights, we actually got a lot of complaints because there were too many lights, and so we actually had to go through and remove lights in places where people complained.
I remember distinctly with the Johnny Rush tragedy that he had walked through a dark parking lot on a private piece of property that I immediately thought, I wonder what the review of that project looked like and if there could have been more lighting. So I think it's
as a
yeah.
dark-skinned person in a dark earth suit,
Yeah.
this is, it sounds cute, but it's not.
Yeah.
If people are scared of the boogeyman, they think a black person is the boogeyman, and we're not. So just put more lighting,
Yeah.
because that's called accessibility for everybody.
It's true, and I generally think, when we bring in these mixed-use projects with retail on the ground floor, we add activation and lighting and safety by default, but having some understanding of what that looks like and is spelled out
It's
in our
part of
code.
cultural competency and safety for every human.
So, I'll follow up with another email for another agenda item. So what's the problem over here? We have a tie?
We have a tie for VP,
So, Chair is Sage and Ty for VP. So I've just checked in with the city clerk's office. I looked at the rules of procedure and I don't see anything, so we'll see what they say.
Good job, Iowa.
And we're missing Tobias. We could do something creative, like talk about VP again next time. I don't know. We don't have a solution, but we do have an absence. And I don't want him to, I don't want to email him and do it that way, but maybe if we all reconvene. Yeah, so maybe if we reconvene on VP next month. Does that sound like an acceptable solution? Did anybody hear me?
Well,
I don't know, we don't have a procedure for this. I'm not sure that it's ever happened. We do have an absence today, so we could reconvene on the vice chair. It won't throw off next meeting because I'll be there to chair it. Thank you for that, by the way. But we could vote when we have everyone present.
or someone could just nominate me for vice chair.
But practical solution is that we do have an absence, so we could vote again next time. How does that sound? Okay. And you can think about it all month. You can call people. You can do whatever you need to do.
Or we could hear from the two candidates and then re-vote right now.
Let's do it with everyone present next time. We could end up with the same situation. Does that work?
I don't know if it makes sense, but I am fine to step down and give Andrew
That is your
chance
call.
If everyone's okay with that and that feels good, I'm fine with that.
You might have better choice with Toby and I do. That's pretty quick.
If you want to withdraw your submission as a nominee, that's fine. We can also do next month with everyone present. I'll leave that up to you if you would like to withdraw.
I'm fine to withdraw.
Okay. All right, Andrew it is.
We accomplished something on the day that we were doing it, y'all. High five.
I appreciate y'all voting me as chair again. I enjoy it, and I hope it's helping and working for y'all. And as always, if you ever have any feedback on process that could be better or ways that I could do this better to serve everyone, let me know. Next up are the updates and reports. So we have the Asheville Downtown Association. The link is not quite in the document, so I'm going to read. Oh, it wasn't on that.
Everyone's screens.
Oh, and your screens is open, just not for the screen for the public. So we'll read through some things. Big announcement, which is really great, is that March 5th, the next speaker series has been a collaboration that I got to help with, which is every 2 years we do a biannual housing needs assessment, which is the broad report. This time it's almost 400 pages around the needs in our community for housing, particularly affordability and the various income levels and rent levels. So we just had it updated by Patrick Bowen, and we have teamed up with the Downtown Association to have Patrick Bowen, the actual research firm, be our speaker. So we're going to have a massive event focused on affordable housing. This is great. I'm really excited. So it's March 5th at the Collider. There'll be an announcement and some more invites, and I'll make sure you get it. It sounds like it's going to be like 5:30 to 6-ish start. Next up for the Downtown Association is a big one. I encourage you all to go to this. It's always very informative. Wednesday, February 26th is the State of Downtown Luncheon. It does it's not a fee, so I wouldn't say sell out, but it does fill up. And it's 12 to 1:30. There is a fee. I'm sorry. As a board member, I guess I don't pay that fee. What is the fee?
It's $15 for members, 20 for non-members, but it does include a catered lunch.
Okay, my apologies. I have not, as a board member, had to pay that.
The lunch was good last year.
The lunch is great. The information is great. We will hear from both Mayor Mannheimer and Brownie Newman, and Megan always does a great job delivering it, so please do come. We have Easter on the Green, Saturday, April 11th. Downtown after 5 will kick off in May. And yeah, if you look at the document, you'll see we've planned events all the way through the holiday parade. Great, okay. The next update, Design Review Committee. So y'all had submitted notes, thank you. I feel like the note process is really great. Was the only thing on there the project we just reviewed? Okay, so we don't really have an update? Okay. Can you tell me if there are other projects in the pipeline? Do you know I know we've had to cancel several meetings because there weren't any projects, but we don't know. Okay, we don't know. Okay. Parking and Transportation Committee. Hey, great news. At February 11th, Council approved transit passes for all boards and commission members. So you all are getting transit passes. This is great, right? They're non-transferable. You can use them. There's a, I guess I dropped it in my box. I'm not sure if it was attached to the agenda, but the actual document talking about it, let's see. It is, so you can refuse it too. So it's non-transferable. You're responsible for returning the pass to the staff liaison if you resign from the committee. The names will be provided to Art. You can pick up your passes by providing your name and your board at the station. And
You'll let me know by February 24th.
I would like one. Who wants one?
Does anyone not want one?
Anyone not want one?
Ruth? Okay.
Okay. Well, that's awesome and exciting, and something that lots of boards and committee folks have been talking about for a few years, so I'm glad to have it back. Thank you for your work on that too, Dana. Okay, so other things in parking and transportation, we have been trying to get behind some of this development of the PPPP, the private-public parking partnership. So that, it's a little different than the just traditional 3Ps because it's about parking. But, we're just kind of looking at examples and trying to draft a framework. And the goal is that if you are a developer coming into the community and you're applying at development services, that we would like to give you an array of information, one of which could be, what does a partnership with the city look like on parking? And other than that, I did include, did this link get added, the parking survey results? Okay, so there's a quick result survey that the city's Department of Transportation did. Did you all get a chance to look at it? So it was about, do you find parking? Is it accessible? Were you able to find it quickly? Did you have any problems getting out? Do you know about the app? And so on. Some really interesting things. So 63% of the people knew about the Asheville app to use parking, which is great. But only 23% have used it. So some marketing around that or actual use. Are you aware that the real-time availability of parking spaces in the city's garage is embedded in the, I'm sorry, that was the wrong question. 31% said, it moved. Were you able to find parking quickly? 31% said no. 51% said yes, which is great. Some takeaways were you able to enter the parking garage quickly and stress-free? 75% said yes. So just a little data there. It's always helpful to know how the decks are operating and overall parking is. We also asked about the events. So there's been a little community push from business owners about the parking, the special events and the cost and the closing of the parking decks. And how do you feel about the special event rates? And 36% it was average. 63% said it was too high. So that's something we'll continue to talk about in the committee. All right, how about other updates? We're on to Local Living Economy Working Group. It's a very exciting week for your group.
So 2 years ago, the Asheville City Council proclaimed the week of Valentine's as Go Local Week, and it's grown ever since. We encourage locally owned businesses to celebrate with their own special events. We help market that. We also put on a couple of events with our partners, and one happened yesterday, and it was the local resource fair. Julie was there, and I think it was very well attended, and it felt really good. We had all kinds of local organizations like Megan from the Asheville Downtown Association, Jane from AIR, even John Philman was there with the City of Asheville to talk about what they do, how they can help local businesses succeed, and I think the attendance was close to 70 folks.
Wow.
So we're thinking about having it maybe twice a year in a bigger space next time because it was really good. And then this Saturday, we're also hosting a local social at the new Leaf Global Arts Center. For those of you who've been in town for a while, it's the old Del Cardo building at the corner of South Market and Eagle Streets, as well as a block off Biltmore right across the street. So it's a co-event from 4 to 7 this Saturday. It's free. Come check out the new Leaf Global Arts and party with us. We're gonna have DJs in both spaces and free salsa dancing lessons, some vegan food, some craft beverages, and a lot of good people will be there. So please come out.
That's great.
Yep.
Thank you.
And you can learn more about all the things going on downtown. Loveasheville.org. It has all a list of like 60 events or so.
Yeah, there's a lot. I was impressed. Great
There's a
event.
lot.
Good job. Thank you for all that work. Okay, spring retreat updates. We do have the dates. Do you have anything specific you want to add? So it is March 19th to the 20th. We are staying overnight. Thank you to many of you that I discussed offline with about hotels and covering your own costs to save on the overall city budget.
Just a couple updates. We booked the Hampton Inn, so that is the hotel we've selected. We do need to confirm attendees by next Friday, so I know we still have just a couple things to work through on our end too, but be in touch with me if you have not. Clearly let me know if you can make it or not. The themes of the trip, we're looking at design review, innovations in transit, equity, and placemaking. And we're planning to show some videos about Chattanooga on the bus ride there. So kind of working through some of those details, and we'll continue to talk with Sage about those things and come back to the commission next. Well, yes, next we have one more meeting before the retreat.
And I have a call with the Riverfront Chair later today, so if anything comes up between now and then that we can share with you, I will.
There's a really cool parking deck. I can't wait to show you guys.
Does it have maximums?
No, it's a deck with retail and greenery. It's really cool. And I didn't see any buskers when I was there last time. But.
That's great. Okay. All right, downtown update, Dana?
Good morning. I learned last month when I was watching the meeting that not all of you read my reports, so I encourage you to take a look at them. Honestly, I provide links on there to more information about these various projects, so I do encourage you to do that. And I usually make those available, pretty late or, the day before in the afternoons, but they remain available. So please, I encourage you to go take a look at all of that information.
We've run out of time a couple times, so we should, as a commission, look back at whether or not this format of moving it to the end helps, because there's been twice that we just didn't even get to your report.
Yeah. But they are written out too, so if we don't get to it, the information is available. So we are moving forward with master concept designs for the Haywood and Page properties, and the next round of public engagement is coming up next week on Monday and Tuesday. So there's a large public presentation and breakout work sessions happening on Monday at 6 p.m. and that's at the Center for Craft in their downstairs ideation lab. And then we also have two drop-by sessions the following day, one at 10 a.m. and one at 2 p.m. We've been meeting with the Vision Implementation Committee, which includes Ruth and Andrew, and they've gotten to get an early peek at those design concepts, and we've gotten really positive feedback at this point. I do have some postcards. Feel free to take some extra postcards and help us get the word out. So that's coming up next Monday and Tuesday.
Andrew, you're a part of that, right?
Noise ordinance, development services staff got their revisions over to the legal department. So at this point, we're just waiting for legal to kind of make sure the language is right. We do expect the revisions to be made available to the public. I hate to promise a date on that, but we're hopeful that that will be made available this month. Staff does plan to go to City Council's Public Safety Committee on February 27th to provide updates on the revisions.
Will we review it?
They're going to make it available online, and there's going to be some opportunity for public comment. I don't know the extent of that, and my understanding is they don't plan to go back out to individual groups.
But we could still discuss it as a group. Okay. Let's watch the process closely. Maybe we'll add that to a future agenda. This is making me think we really need to update our work plan. Yeah, we'll do that too.
Haywood Streetscape and Infrastructure Improvement Project. So this is in construction, began in early January, and most of the work has been taking place on Walnut and College Streets, and that's been sewer line and water line work. We expect the work on College to be wrapped up in about 2 weeks. The work on Walnut's going to continue a little bit longer, and it's going to move to the eastern section of Walnut on the other side of Lexington, so between Lexington and Broadway. We do plan to begin work on Haywood Street the week of February 24th, and that's going to begin with, it's all work in the roadway first before the sidewalks are worked on. So we are sending regular updates about that, and we also have open office hours once a month on the third Thursday at the ADA office, so that anybody interested in asking questions or getting more information can come by.
Just a little feedback for you that I've talked to and heard from some of the businesses that were impacted, and as much as they said, oh, you know, it's a headache and stuff, they felt really informed, they knew it was coming, and they weren't upset for those reasons. They weren't blindsided, which I know in the past we've had those issues, so good job.
Thank you for that. SoCon is coming up, but we don't expect that to be significantly impacted, so we are going to be redirecting traffic southbound on Haywood Street and reducing traffic to one lane during construction. But when active construction is not taking place, that will be opened back up to two-way. And the crew is going to stop construction on Thursday afternoon, the weekend of SoCon, and not begin again until Tuesday. So we shouldn't see a lot of impacts there. I just wanted to keep our homeless outreach point of contact and update on this report for you. Robert Stevenson, he works for Homeward Bound. The position is funded by the city. It's a 3-year contract, and he is out engaging with individuals in need throughout the city, but really where there is the most need, and so he does spend a lot of time downtown. I would encourage you to be in touch with him. You can encourage business owners to reach out to him. He knows about all of the resources available to people and is really working on relationship building with those individuals in need, and also with business owners and anybody else that has an interest in these issues. Hotel moratorium. So the city contracted with the Urban Land Institute, who is studying the issues surrounding hotel development. There have been 2 sessions in January where they heard feedback from the community. They did a presentation January 30th where they reported back some of their findings and recommendations. So the next step is a council work session, and that's happening on February 25th from 3 to 5 p.m. And staff will discuss the recommendations they've heard from ULI and get some prioritization and direction from council. Just a couple development updates. 11 Collier, for anybody that's been keeping an eye on that, that is scheduled to go to planning and zoning in March. So that keeps kind of getting pushed, but it is scheduled to go back there on March 4th.
Can I add a little update to that?
Yeah.
I went to one of the neighborhood, well, they're not required to do a neighborhood meeting, but they're voluntarily meeting with various members of the community. But I got an update that, so they're giving the preservation group a 12-month period to try and raise the funds. So it sounds to me like they're going to continue to go through the planning and approval process, but we'll still allow that group to try and raise the funds to buy the property. So they're just staying to the calendar, but just so you know. The proposed outdoor event space at Cox Avenue, so that's continuing to move through the staff review process. There aren't formal opportunities for public input on that. I also know that they've been meeting with community members. Some components of that proposal have been approved, as I understand, specifically the restroom building, so you might see some construction activity there, but I know they're expecting a traffic impact report, and I don't think we'd received that yet, so there's still some work to do on getting through approval of that. I think I recall that it's 22 restrooms. Does that sound right to you?
I don't know.
And it's an outdoor block of restrooms. Yeah. I know. Fascinating, right? And I love that they are also voluntarily meeting with the community repeatedly. If you are concerned about this project, I encourage you to go to one of those. It's very helpful.
And if you do want to share your concerns, I'd encourage you to just probably reach out to Ben Woody in Development Services and let him know your comments.
I'm concerned it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I can tell you a little bit about what I heard. I can give a couple things. So they're not expecting to do more than 12 to 18 events a year. That they're really focusing on family events, and they're doing the outdoor restrooms. They're removing some of the asphalt to plant grass, which I thought was neat. Yeah, it sounds like a really, it's the folks from the Orange Peel, which have done a really good job stewarding our, arts and music and cultural events around respectfulness for the neighbors that live downtown too. So I have a lot of hope for it.
Okay, and also last month there was a discussion about the Broadway Cultural Gateway Plan, and we said we would come back to provide some updates. So I do have just a couple things to share. Recommendations as part of that plan is something we included in the list of projects that the city's submitting for consideration for the tourism management and investment plan. So there is no funding identified at this point for any major work to happen in that area, but that is the recommendations of that plan are on the city's list. Regarding shared trash management, which is something that was discussed quite a bit as part of that project, Chris Joyelle had been in touch with our sanitation division manager about possibilities there, and she was able to provide me an update. She really likes the idea of shared waste collection, and it's something that's done in other cities successfully. At this point, we aren't in a great position to be able to launch a pilot program. It's not something that we'd be able to offer to everybody throughout downtown, so we don't have a great process for that. However, the Public Works Department is recommending funding for a solid waste master plan. So that was not funded last year, and they're asking for funding again this year. And that is the type of plan that would include a lot of community engagement and ultimately result in recommendations for this type of more innovative trash management type of project. So I was hoping maybe Jess Foster, our sanitation division manager, could make it here today. She couldn't, but she is interested if that solid waste master plan is something the commission wants to learn more about or consider, thinking about a way to kind of try to formally support that. That's something that
Let's add it to the list of next agenda
add it to the
items.
list. Great.
Maybe as projects slow down, we'll get to tackle some of these bigger things.
Well, I mean, it's definitely needed in Caroline Lane for sure, but I mean, really it's something that can benefit a lot of different areas in downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody basically has the same problem. I mean, we have these trash bins that we don't have a place for them. And so shared trash would be great. I mean, that would help a lot. Also have a question for you. Is there any plan to pave Carolina Lane?
So the recommendations of the Broadway Cultural Gateway Plan, they ask for permeable paving, so it wouldn't be a standard paving, which does get a little bit more complicated because there's a lot of stormwater issues that need to be addressed. So our stormwater staff is aware of the recommendations in the plan and have considered some of those in terms of what might work and what wouldn't work. There's no funding identified at this point. So I don't think paving a standard asphalt is really following the intent of the plan. So I think it's just a longer process.
I think that was a very aspirational thing that they put in there about the permeable paving. I don't think it's practical. I mean, we don't have any permeable paving anywhere in downtown. I mean, it's just, the closest thing we have is Market Street, which is, our only remaining road street in town. It's too expensive and it's not in our budget. I just don't think it's going to happen in an alley.
I don't know how we get from here to there. So if we were to do standard paving and that's something that the group involved with the plan wants to recommend, I'm not sure how to formalize that request because at this point we are seeing those recommendations. So just not sure. I hear you.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think.
Okay. Maybe I don't know. And those are the updates I have. I have one more item from the city clerk's office. You are able to get tickets for the Southern Conference basketball tournament if you'd like. So I have these letters, which I guess tell you how to get the tickets to hand out.
Dana, as you do that, I would like to request that since this group reviews so many hotels, that we get a actual agenda item and presentation about the ULI and the moratorium and all those things. So I'm going to send you a 6th email about a future agenda item. I wish that I had. I had already sent on the other.
Okay. Okay. And you should have received a reminder from our city clerk's office about an equity survey that was sent out. So just a reminder to please take that survey.
I want to add to what Dana said about the Haywood Page project and the design about that. And I'm really excited with the progress I'm seeing on that. And I think that what is coming out of this progress, what was coming out of this process, is going to really look like progress to a lot of the people who have been on either side of the issue. And I'm really hopeful that we're going to get something that has legs and that works in our community. And I'm really excited about what I'm seeing. And I feel like we got the right consultants to do this thing.
Good. So we originally allocated $390,000 for that design work. Did we end up, I know it was for up to like 4 designs. Are we going to see 4 designs, or is there some pullback to
You're going to
save
see
money?
3 designs.
We're going to see 3.
Yeah.
So we may have saved some money.
No. I think it was like 320 something thousand. But we're not done with that work yet. But it was up to 3 designs was their contract, and we have 3. I don't know if 3 will move forward to council or
Right.
1 or 2, but yeah.
I was looking for ways to help fund the forester.
Although maybe there's an opportunity for savings
Yeah.
if there's a clear plan that people support here and then they work on.
That's what I'm wondering.
Feeling
If
it's
the
going to be a
community
mix
comes
of
together,
things.
if we have all these other collective goals, if we come together with a more concise movement forward, then we could save some money to fund other things like.
Well, we don't even have a budget for the project. I mean,
No,
that's
but we
just
have a
what
project.
it's
We have a budget and an allocated amount for the designs. It was $390. I remember the thing, but maybe we've spent less.
That was just the design, that
Yeah.
wasn't the actual project.
Yeah.
That's not even the design, it's just the master planning, really.
Exactly. There's
So
so much more
it's-
involved here.
Yeah, we got a lot of steps to go, but
You're
the
getting
only thing I'm
closer.
saying is that we're not, to me at this point, this does not look like a step backwards. This looks like a step forwards.
And
So,
after only 12 years, I mean.
hey, that site has killed every bad idea anyone's ever thrown at it. So, it's the trial by fire, but I think we got it.
Okay. Anything else, y'all?
Yeah, I have one thing.
Okay.
February 23rd is the Mardi Gras parade on Cox Avenue at 3 p.m. So it's a lot of fun. It's our second biggest parade in downtown. All of Asheville, actually. So show up. It's a lot of fun.
Would you send us an invite to remind us?
Sure, absolutely.
Y'all come out and wave. I'll be on one of the floats with my band. Right?
That's great.
The
Put some
Dead
Haywood and
Royals.
Page designs up there.
Oh, you're a Dead Royal?
No, my band's with the Dead Royals.
Oh, with
Okay.
We hang out with Dead Royals.
Kimberly?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, part of the reason why I love serving on this commission is the diversity between us. One of the things that I represent are a lot of people that look like me, that have darker earth suits. And at some point, I'd like us, I know we keep reviewing buildings, and that's why I'm here. But I would also like us to consider how to respectfully combine the need for more buildings, more affordable housing, with the need for humans to be treated with respect because they can be seen, because people don't feign fear because they can't see us. All of that goes into design. And there's a lack of respect for humanity when people who are physically different have to fight for equity and just being seen. Whether that's because you are physically incapable of walking, or if it means because you're what we called my grandpa, really, really dark black. And so that doesn't make him scary, that doesn't make him bad, but we have to begin to think about community building, about physical design in a way that doesn't criminalize people of color and people with disabilities.
I wondered if we have a committee that could begin that discussion. Is it local living economy? I mean, we're pushing, so we're already emailing about the running bond going towards to parking, and or parking maximums going to parking committee, running bond going to design committee, but I'm wondering where we can start that discussion.
It's got to start.
Yeah.
It's criminalization of people because of their physical personhood. They can't help it. It's got to stop.
And we tackle some of this livability in the local living economy working group. I think that's the full name. I wonder if that's a good place, because you're part of that, right? Not always, yeah. Okay, well, let's discuss it offline and see where we
What
can.
about looking to our equity and inclusion office?
Yeah.
Well, I think we also have to participate in that, and I know that, you know, our body hasn't necessarily like jumped in with the Equity and Inclusion Office to
Let's
do
do
our
that.
part. So, you know, we can make these
That would be
recommendations, but we have to want it. And I can't be the only one. I'm asking for other folks on this committee to care too.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to listen and lift.
Well, and I think, yeah, to that point, the Equity and Inclusion Department has a few staff members, and I'm not sure how they're rolling out through all boards and committees. There have been some trainings I know I've attended, but maybe it's time to ask for them to come see us.
I will say, so the trainings are made available to all board and commission members. Their job is not to work directly with people that want that support. Their job is to provide training opportunities and really to help staff understand what these issues and needs are. So I would try to participate in those opportunities that are made available to you. I'm happy to check, but I'm pretty sure I know how that's gonna go.
I'm happy to email on your behalf, though. And
People who physically can't move around, or people who are Black, are no longer criminalized by the way we build buildings and communities and downtowns.
thank you. I'll talk with Dana and other city members about how we can support them. Thank you. Anything else? Comments, questions? All right. Loaded meeting. I appreciate y'all and your time today, and we are adjourned.
Public comment?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Public comment. Did anyone have an additional public comment? Okay. We are now adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.